Hello and welcome into this week's ARCA Menard Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen. This is Racing News Now. And we not only turned left, but we also turned right this weekend. 2 road course stops for the ARCA Menard Series. First for the main ARCA Series at Mid-Ohio on Friday, and then the ARCA West Series went to Sonoma on Saturday. As you have seen, we were at Mid-Ohio on Friday with the post-race interviews. With how the travel and everything worked out, and then with Sonoma being so close to Mid-Ohio, it didn't make a lot of sense to do a Mid-Ohio rewind as well as this one. So we're going to quickly recap Mid-Ohio in this one before moving into Sonoma. But first, if you're new here, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button. It's free to do. We're currently in our hashtag Race to 1K. The quicker we get to 1,000 subscribers, the quicker YouTube will let us do mobile live streaming, which will greatly improve both the quality and quantity of coverage we're able to give you from the track. Again, we were at Mid-Ohio this weekend, taking, I think, about a month break between now and the next race we'll be at, which will either be Elko or Berlin in July. Elko is still a little up in the air, not 100% sure if we will be there or not, but we will definitely be at Berlin. And then after that point, we're going to be at basically every ARCA race for the rest of the season. I think Watkins Glen is the only other one besides Elko that's still up in the air a little bit. So the quicker we get to 1,000 subscribers, the quicker you get more coverage from those races as well as live coverage. So definitely consider going down there and hitting that subscribe button. First, let's talk about the Dawn 150 from Friday, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course for the ARCA Menard Series. Honestly, more the same from what we've seen so far this season. Ty Gibbs dominates. Corey Heim had a pretty solid run at him. At different points, I thought maybe with the right adjustment, Corey might be able to actually do something with Ty in this race. Unfortunately, didn't get the chance at that late in the race, as on a late restart, got a penalty for jumping the restart, so he had to come down to a pass-through penalty. And then to add insult to injury, when he was serving that pass-through, got caught for speeding on pit road, so had to do another pass-through penalty. Fought his way back, though. Wasn't as bad as it could have been. Still took a hit in the points, though. So let's take a look at your top 10 results from this race real quick here. Ty Gibbs, of course, winning this race, leading 35 of the 42 laps. The only other drivers leading laps in this race were 4 laps from Brandon Jones and 3 laps from Corey Heim. Austin Hill, in a rare ARCA Menard Series appearance in the Hattori Racing #1 car, brought it home in second. Thad Moffitt, Brandon Jones, Nick Sanchez, the rest of the top 5. A name we haven't heard in a long time, Stanton Barrett, brings it home in 6th in that 12 car for Fast Track. Corey Heim landed in 7th. Again, not as bad as it could have been, but definitely takes a hit in the points from that. Chris Wright in the 30 never had a shot in this one. Got turned into the kitty litter early in this race. Fought his way back from 2 laps down. Still ended up 1 lap down. Came home in the 8th position. Arnott Koch from South Africa came home in 9th. Also driving a fast track car for Andy Hillenberg and Kyle Sieg. Rounded out the top 10. Quick look at your standings. 7 races into the main ARCA Menard Series schedule, and Ty Gibbs has officially taken the points lead now by 1 point over Corey Heim. Thad Moffitt now minus 44 in 3rd. Nick Sanchez 72 back in 4th, and Drew Dollar sits in the 5th position. The only drivers to actually have competed in all 7 races are your top 4 there: Ty Gibbs, Corey Heim, Thad Moffitt, and Nick Sanchez. All right, so that is your points following the Dawn 150 at Mid-Ohio. So let's take a look at Sonoma. Today's ARCA West action, or I guess going to end up being yesterday's ARCA West action by the time this goes out. The General Tire 200, scheduled for 50 laps around the 2.52 mile road course, Sonoma Raceway, Sonoma, California. Why is this race 50 laps? I know this is how it's always been, because I ended up having to look this up during the watch party, because I could not believe this race had been 50 laps in the past. I probably complained about this the last time in 2019 that it was 50 laps. This race is too long. There was no point in this race being 50 laps. This race took over 2 hours, well, close to 2 hours. The official race time is 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 23 seconds. What other West races go 2 hours? You could have cut this race in half and it would have been perfect. There is no point in running this race for 50 laps. especially when one driver is just going to run away with it. Now, I will say, you take the driver that dominated this race out of the equation, this was a great race. There was passing, there was excitement, there was beating and banging, there were drivers off track. There was all kinds of stuff happening in this race. Unfortunately, there was one driver 2 to 10 seconds ahead most of the race. But if you take him out of the equation, this race was fantastic. This was one of the best road course races I've seen in forever. So it's a balancing act here. And I think if you eliminate about half of this race, if you run this for about 20 to 30 laps, I think that's the perfect distance for this race. It just felt like those first 20 to 25 laps were just filler. Nothing really happened, and then the excitement really started ramping up in the second half, especially after we got past the break and got the pit stops out of the way. That's when things started to heat up in this race a lot, and that's when things got a lot more exciting. I think you could have just cut out that whole first half of this race. It was unnecessary, it was unneeded, it was just too long to begin with for an ARCA West race. ARCA, please consider going forward with this race, just run it 25 to 30 laps. There's no point in having it more than 30 laps. There's really not. So let's take a look at your caution report. 7 caution flags for a total of 21 laps. First one came at lap number 2 as the 68 of Rod Nealand stalled outside of turn number 7. Didn't even complete a full lap, which is something interesting you'll note when we get to the results, as that put him in a weird position that I wouldn't have expected, but we'll get into that more when we get to the results. It makes sense when you think about it, it's weird. Lap 7, the 54 of Joey East blows up, and that would be the end of the day for him, which was really unfortunate, as he easily had a top 5 car on the day. Unfortunately, didn't make it very far in this one. Then we had the break at lap number 26, and then things got really crazy in the second half of this race. Lap 36, the 42 of Tony Toasty got off the course in turn 1. Multi-car incident on the restart there at lap 39 involving the 19 of Eric Nascimento, the 80 of Brian Kaminsky, and the 86 of Tim Spurgeon. Multi-car incident there in turn 4. Turn 4 seemed to be calamity corner today. Everybody was overshooting that corner and running into everybody else. That's where everything seemed to be happening today. Lap 44, Nascimento off course once again in turn 7 to bring out the caution. Final caution came on that restart on lap 47 as the 9 of Jake Drew made contact with another car, in fact got turned into the 77 of Dave Smith, and they both go off track. That would cause the final caution of the day to send us into overtime. Unfortunate for Jake Drew, as he definitely had a top 3 car on the day. Second or third, I think, definitely was where he should have been today, as he really was right there in that second to third place battle all day, and unfortunately this really took him out of it late in the race. Lap leaders on the day, leading every lap in this race. The NASCAR Cup Series driver in this race, Chase Briscoe, led all 51 laps in this race. Now, you might be asking, why is no one complaining about the Cup Series driver coming down into the ARCA West race and stealing the win in this race like they do with Kyle Busch in the Truck Series? That is a very good question. I do not have the answer to that. And there may be people complaining about it, but I haven't seen it. And it may be because he doesn't do it very often. This is the first ARCA West win for Chase Briscoe, so it may just be because he never really comes down into ARCA and does this. But seems a little hypocritical to not complain about Chase Briscoe winning this race when you complain about Kyle Busch or somebody else winning a truck race. Just saying. Let's get into the results for this race. Of course, Chase Briscoe leads every lap, wins this race. By far the dominant car in this race. Interestingly enough, the car owner for this car is listed as Chad Bryant, which I thought was interesting given Chad Bryant Racing was supposed to have dissolved at the end of last season, and he is now the crew chief at GMS. So I thought that was interesting that they entered this as a Chad Bryant car. It was essentially a Stewart-Haas car. It was prepared by Stewart-Haas. It was essentially so Briscoe could get some experience before tomorrow's Cup race, as he's never been at Sonoma before. He made the comment in his post-race TV interview that this was necessary to gain that track experience because practice and qualifying isn't happening this weekend. Is it really necessary, though? He's the only Cup driver that was in this race, but he's not the only Cup driver that's never been to Sonoma before. So why was it necessary for him and not for these other Cup drivers? That's what I don't understand. Maybe it was necessary. Maybe they missed the boat and he's going to go out and dominate tomorrow in the Cup race. It just seems odd that he would be the only one. And I know we've seen upper level drivers come down and run this race in the past, but outside of Zane Smith, Chase Briscoe was the only one to do that in this race. And as we'll see as we get later into the results, Zane Smith wasn't even a factor in this race for circumstances outside of his control. It just seems a little weird. I'm not knocking on Chase Briscoe. It just seems a little weird that he needed to be in this race in the first place. I digress. Dylan Lupton comes home in the second position. That's a name we haven't heard in a while. In fact, I don't think we've heard it since last year. I don't think he's run anything in any of the top 3 series or ARCA this year yet. He ran a few races for DGR last year, but this is the first time I think we've seen him in 2021. Comes out in a Bill McAnally car, clearly either the second or the third fastest car. It was definitely between he and Jake Drew all day for the second fastest car. They just kept swapping that second position back and forth. If you took Chase Briscoe out of the equation, we had a great battle for the win between Dylan Lupton and Jake Drew, and unfortunately that wasn't the case because Chase Briscoe was here. But either way, Dylan Lupton comes home with a very strong 4th place finish, carrying the banner on a fairly dismal day for Bill McAnally Racing, with 4 entries in this race and only 2 of them in the top 10. PJ Pedroncelli comes home in the 3rd position. A fantastic run out of PJ Pedroncelli today. Kept his nose clean when almost everyone else was involved in some sort of an incident today, or at least was off track at some point. PJ Pedroncelli was not involved in any of that and comes home with a very strong 3rd place finish at the end of this race. Fantastic run out of that 33 car. Cole Moore, another BMR car in the top 5. He came home in the 4th position. Showed some speed all day today. Definitely a top 5 car. Don't think he had a winning car, but definitely strong run out of Cole Moore today. And then Todd Souza in 5th. Todd Souza was an interesting case today. Took the lead on the initial start. Unfortunately got a penalty for jumping the start. Where have we heard that before this weekend? Had to come down, serve a pass through. Luckily, got a caution almost immediately after that, so never really lost any time, just had to go to the back of the field. Fought his way back through the field, had one of the fastest cars in the field today. I think at one point he was at least the 2nd fastest car on the track, and at points may have even been faster than Chase Briscoe. Very aggressive though. Running into people, car was sideways at many different points in the track. Todd Souza was a man on the mission in this race, and he was not going to let anybody get in his way. And if that meant moving them out of the way, he was going to do it. I don't know that we've ever seen that side of Todd Souza before, but he was a man on a mission today. Got as high at, well, after the penalty on the first lap, got as high as 3rd, I believe. Had an issue, went off track late in the race, which put him back to 5th, and that would be where he would land on the day. Still a good run for him and a good points day, as we will see as we move to the point standings. Rest of your top 10, good run for Dean Thompson in 6th. Jake Drew, after his late wreck, came home in 7th. Bridget Burgess, gotta give a shout out to Bridget Burgess. Great run today, had great speed, might have even had top 5 speed. Unfortunately, got turned in turn 11 in the middle portions of the race by Jessie Love, which set her way back in the pack. Fought her way back, spun it again at another point later in the race, still came back for an 8th place finish. Kudos to Bridget Burgess. I think this is the best run we've seen out of her in an ARCA race so far. Hopefully this is just the beginning and we continue to see her improve and get better and better finishes going forward. Bobby Hillis Jr. rounding out the top 10. 11th through 20th, Trevor Huddleston, abysmal day all around. Started in the 12th position, got as high as 7th, I think, at one point, maybe 6th. Must have had some sort of an incident on the last lap, because I know he was in the top 10 when they took the white flag, and somehow ends up in 12th. So I'm not sure what happened there. It was never really shown on the Track Pass broadcast, not sure what happened, but came home in the 12th position, so not a good day for Trevor Huddleston, continuing his woes that really started last season. He's never really pulled out of the rut that he's been in since the 2020 season. Hopefully at some point this season he's able to pull out of that and get some more strong finishes and possibly some more wins. Eric Nascimento in the 19 for BMR today, 14th on the day, had top 5 speed, unfortunately. Had a couple of incidents late in the race and ended up parking it for mechanical issues 9 laps before the end of the race. Jesse Love, 19th on the day. What can we say about Jesse Love today? An uncharacteristically slow day for Jesse Love. I believe I heard he got into an accident in practice in the combined practice qualifying session, which is why he ended up starting so deep in the field. He started 8th, which for Jesse Love is deep in the field. Never really was a factor in this race. I don't think he ever cracked the top 5. Had a couple incidents where he ended up turning a couple cars in turn 11. Don't want to place the blame completely on him, because at least to some extent, both of those situations were those drivers that got turned just shutting the door on Jesse a little too late, and Jesse was already there. So don't want to completely place the blame on Jesse for any of those, as they weren't completely his fault. And then ended up just having mechanical issues late in the race. Ends up stalled at one point on the backstretch, brings it down pit road. They try to work on the car on pit road. Clearly it was something more terminal than what they thought it was, and he ends up parking it after 29 laps. Not a good day for your defending ARCA West champion. Not a good start to the season, as Phoenix wasn't that great for him either. Moving on to, I believe Irwindale is the next West race. So moving on to Irwindale, and hopefully that 16 team can get their season back on the right track and moving forward from that point. Joey East only completing 6 laps in this race before the engine let go. Unfortunate, as he definitely did have a top 5 car on the day and wasn't able to show it. Now the final page, 21st and 22nd, Zane Smith and Rod Nealon. Zane Smith didn't even make it to the green flag as the engine let go on the pace laps. He had smoke billowing out of that car while we were still under pace laps. Didn't take the green flag. Rod Nealon, on the other hand, did take the green flag. Did not complete the first lap because of his mechanical issues, so technically is still scored as a DNS, a did not start. And because Zane Smith qualified higher than Rod Nealon, Zane qualified 4th, Rod Nealon qualified 19th, Zane is actually scored higher than Rod Nealon on the finishing results. I guess when you think about it, it makes sense since neither one completed a lap, but the fact that Rod Nealon took the green flag and Zane did not does make you question it a little bit. I'm not saying ARCA did anything wrong here. I'm saying it's kind of a thinker, and it's a little weird when you look at it, knowing that Rod Nealon did start the race and Zane Smith didn't. Just a weird situation all around. Just one of those weird, quirky things with timing and scoring that is almost unavoidable. Alright, so that's your results from the General Tire 200, a wild General Tire 200 from the Sonoma Raceway. Not sure who we'll have on this week. Definitely going to try to get at least 1 or 2 interviews this week with some of the more notable stories from this race. Probably not going to get Chase Briscoe, as given that he's a Cup driver and a lot more busy than some of these guys tend to be in the ARCA at the ARCA level, so probably not going to be able to fit into his schedule just for an ARCA interview. So we will try to get some of these other stories on for you, the PJ Pedroncellis, the Bridget Burgesses, try and get some of them on to tell their story after having great runs at Sonoma. So let's take a look at your ARCA West point standings now. 2 races into this season, and boy are they wild. This is not the point standings I was expecting to look at for the ARCA West 2 races into this season. Todd Souza leads the points by 1 point over PJ Pedroncelli. Usually we're used to seeing Sunrise Fords and BMR Toyotas at the top of the points in ARCA West. Your highest of either one of those is Cole Moore in a BMR Toyota in 3rd, 3 points off the lead. Dean Thompson, not officially in a Sunrise Ford, but in an affiliation with them, is technically your highest Sunrise Ford in 4th. He's 8 points back, and Trevor Huddleston sits 5th. The entire top 5 is within 9 points of each other. The entire top 10 is within 21 points of each other. Now granted, we're 2 races in, so the points gap isn't going to be quite as spread as it would be, but just looking at the order of this point standing tells you how wild these first couple ARCA West races have been with these ARCA West regulars. Of course, the first race was a combo race with the main ARCA series, so most of these drivers not going to be up competing for the win in that race. But in terms of their little personal race at Phoenix, it was a little jumbled there too. So you look at these point standings, you look at Jake Drew in 6th, Jesse Love 7th, Bridget Burgess is in 8th, 17 points off the lead after a pretty good start to the season, all things considered for her. This is a wild top 10. This is not the top 10 in points I expected to see at this point. And I'm excited to see, as we continue further through this ARCA West season, do some of these names continue to stay near the top of the point standings? Does Todd Souza and PJ Pedroncelli continue to battle for this ARCA West championship, or do the regulars rise to the top? Cole Moore and Jesse Love in the BMR Toyotas, Dean Thompson, Trevor Huddleston, Jake Drew in the Sunrise Fords. Do they rise to the top as they do every season? Or are we going to see some different names up here this season, like Todd Souza, PJ Pedroncelli, Bridget Burgess? Could we be seeing an extremely abnormal ARCA West championship this year? I'm excited to find that out. I'm excited to continue through this ARCA West season. This might be the most exciting points battle we have at any level of ARCA this season. This is going to be a fun one to watch. But that is your point standings following the General Tire 200 for the ARCA Menard Series West. 2 races into the ARCA West season, and I believe that will do it for us on this ARCA Rewind show. ARCA East coming up this coming Saturday from Southern National Motorsport Park. Then an off week for ARCA, then the main ARCA series goes to Pocono. So we're getting into that summer stretch where there's a race practically every week between all 3 series, and then some weeks there's 2 to 3 races across every level of ARCA, and it's going to get wild and crazy here as we get down through this summer stretch. And I'm glad you're along for the ride with me for these races. It's going to be fun. But I think that's going to about do it for us. Tuesday, iRacing as usual. Not sure who that's going to be this week. Should have somebody on as a guest though, so keep an eye on that. Should be a fun one this week. But as always, we want to thank our Patreon supporter, Regional Manager William Holmes. Thank you as always for your support. It is really greatly appreciated. If you would like to be a patron of RNN, the link is down below in the description. Patreon.com/RacingNewsNow. Not required by any means, but it is definitely appreciated when you want to support RNN in that way. But I think that's going to do it for us tonight. So at that, this has been the ARCA Menard Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.